Hello everyone, I'm Instructor Jerry Roberts and this is PowerShell Scripting. In this video, we're going to talk about what PowerShell is, a brief history of PowerShell, and how PowerShell is actually used. So what exactly is PowerShell? PowerShell is a command line shell and scripting tool. More specifically, a shell is a user interface for an operating system. That could be a command line or what most people are used to, a GUI-based shell where you can click around and interact with the interface. Now, PowerShell is command line based, so you'll be doing a lot of typing. PowerShell allows you to perform tasks by using commands. For example, adding a user to Active Directory using the new -AD user command. It also allows you to create scripts to automate tasks, such as deploying configurations to multiple machines or virtual machines. Here, you can see what PowerShell looks like. Now, in this picture, I have modified the text color, but for the most part, PowerShell is going to look like this, where you just have a bunch of lines of text. So, brief history of PowerShell. Now, originally, Microsoft used either command.exe or cmd.exe for its command line interface. Some of you may remember older interfaces that had to do with DOS and things like that. That's what the command.exe and cmd.exe did. Unfortunately, these are very limited in what they can do. So, Microsoft tried their hand at fixing this by using VB or Visual Basic Script to complete tasks that CMD and command line just could not do. This took a lot of code. I mean, a lot. Very, very many lines. So they worked on making something more efficient and started Project Monad back in about 2002. But it wasn't until 2006, when PowerShell 1.0 was released, that the world got to actually see PowerShell. When PowerShell was released, it was released for Server 2003, Server 2008, XP, Service Pack 2, and Vista. And we are now on PowerShell 5.1 and PowerShell Core 6.0 and 6.1. So, brief history of versioning. PowerShell 1 came out in 2006 and again was Server 2003 and 2008, as well as Windows versions for XP and Vista. In 2009, 2.0 came out, and we were able to use that on 2008 R2 and Windows 7. About 3 years later, we had 3.0, which gave us Server 2012 and Windows 8. Another year later, in 2013, we had 4.0, which gave us Server 2012 R2 and Windows 8.1. 2014, 5.0 came out and allowed us to work with Windows 10. Now, more recently, 2017 5.1 came out, and this allowed us to work with Windows 10 Anniversary Update, Server 2016, and other new iterations of Microsoft products. Now, you might have heard me earlier talk about PowerShell and PowerShell Core versions. PowerShell Core is actually the newer iteration of PowerShell. It's supposed to work on more systems than just Microsoft-based systems. You can run it on Windows, Linux, and Mac systems. Future development is focusing on more Linux distributions, such as IoT operating systems like Raspberry Pi. Currently, PowerShell Core 6.1 supports ARM32 devices with support for more in the future. Going forward, Microsoft plans on eventually replacing all instances of PowerShell with PowerShell Core. However, that isn't something that is 100%, so that is something you will need to pay attention to see if they do. Now, why does versioning matter? Well, there's an issue with versioning. Each version of PowerShell supports different commands and different groups of features. So you might need to choose something different for what you need to accomplish than what is currently with your operating system. To do that, you can get other versions of PowerShell at Microsoft on their PowerShell site at https://docs.microsoft.com/en-us /PowerShell. Now, if you're not in the United States, you can go to your Microsoft site for your country, look up PowerShell, and it should be one of the first results. PowerShell Core is actually available on GitHub. So if you need Core, instead of going to the Microsoft site, you can get it on GitHub. So on GitHub, you can search for PowerShell, or you can make your way to github.com/PowerShell/PowerShell. And over here, you can see what that repository looks like. There are actually quite a few files in here, including documentation. So it's not just the binaries and the things that you need to get PowerShell working. So what is PowerShell used for? Earlier we talked a little bit about that, but let's delve a little bit further. One of the biggest uses of PowerShell is automation. So when we're working on our servers, there are a lot of tasks that we need to do on a regular basis. Now, doing those tasks manually takes up a lot of time. And that could be things like pushing configuration changes to multiple computers or updating accounts. Those kind of things, if we did them individually, just would take forever. So we can use PowerShell to create a script that will run on a regular basis to automate what we're trying to do. PowerShell is also used for creating other types of scripts, such as logon scripts. Logon scripts can do things for us like set the desktop on a computer, set permissions on that computer, and other things. Client and server management, remote management tasks are one of the biggest things here. We can remotely manage client and server machines using PowerShell, using Vim or CMI. We can also use PowerShell for information gathering, such as CPU and system information. So if we need to go and find a bunch of information about particular systems in our network, we can use PowerShell to deploy something to grab that information for us. PowerShell can also be used for computer documentation, such as logs, more specifically like event logs, security logs, and other Windows logs. So time for a test. If you wanted to use PowerShell on a non-Windows operating system, which version would you use? Would you use PowerShell 3.0? Would you use PowerShell Core 6.0? Would you use PowerShell 5.1? Or would you use PowerShell 4.0? Now you could pause this video, but I'll give you a second to figure out the answer, and then I'll give you the answer. All right, the answer, PowerShell Core 6.0. Now, guys, remember, PowerShell Core is the version that is used for Windows and non-Windows systems.